There's a version of you that exists somewhere in the future, living the life you dream about when you're alone at night, achieving the goals you whisper to yourself but rarely say out loud. And the only thing standing between the person you are right now and that elevated version isn't luck, talent, resources, or connections. It's something far simpler yet infinitely more powerful. It's your willingness to show up when you don't feel like it, to execute when motivation has abandoned you, to keep moving forward when every rational part of your brain is screaming for you to stop. And the uncomfortable truth that most people will never admit is that talent without reliability is just wasted potential. Intelligence without application is merely unused capacity. And dreams without daily action are nothing more than elaborate fantasies we tell ourselves to feel better about our current circumstances. Because here's what separates those who transform their lives from those who just talk about transformation. It's not some secret strategy or hidden knowledge. It's the brutal simplicity of doing what needs to be done every single day regardless of how you feel, regardless of who's watching, regardless of whether you see immediate results or not. And I know this might sound harsh, but somebody needs to tell you the truth. Your life right now is the sum total of the actions you've been willing to take consistently over time. If you're not happy with where you are, then you need to look at what you've been doing daily, because results don't lie. Excuses might make you feel better temporarily, but they don't change your reality. And the beautiful thing about this truth is that it means you have complete control. If your current reality is the product of your past consistency, then your future reality will be the product of the consistency you choose to build starting right now. Think about the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Really visualize it. See that distance clearly. Now understand that gap isn't going to close itself through wishful thinking or sporadic bursts of effort. It closes one day at a time through deliberate repetitive action. And here's where most people get it wrong. They're waiting to feel motivated before they take action. They're waiting for inspiration to strike. They're waiting for the perfect moment when all the stars align. And everything feels right, but that moment never comes, because motivation is a result of action, not a prerequisite for it. You don't wait until you feel like going to the gym. You go to the gym and then feel motivated. You don't wait until you feel like working on your business. You work on your business, and the momentum creates the energy. This is the fundamental misunderstanding that keeps people stuck in the same place year after year. They've got the equation backwards. They think feeling comes first, then action follows, but in reality action comes first and feeling follows. And once you internalize this truth, everything changes, because you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop having internal debates about whether you feel like doing what needs to be done. You simply do it because that's who you've decided to be. And this is where we need to talk about identity, because your consistency isn't really about willpower or discipline. Those are just surface-level manifestations of something much deeper. Your consistency is a direct reflection of your identity, of who you believe yourself to be at your core. If you identify as someone who follows through, you'll follow through. If you identify as someone who quits when things get hard, you'll quit when things get hard. It's that simple, and the powerful part is you get to choose your identity. You're not stuck with the story you've been telling yourself. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you're becoming. So when you show up and do the work on a day you don't feel like it, you're not just completing a task, you're casting a vote for your new identity. You're reinforcing the neural pathways that make you into someone who keeps their word to themselves. And that self-trust is everything, because if you can't trust yourself to do what you said you'd do, then how can you possibly expect to build anything meaningful? How can you have confidence if every time you set a goal you know deep down that you probably won't follow through? This lack of self-trust is the real crisis most people face. They don't believe in their own ability to stick with something, and that lack of belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's the antidote. You build self-trust the same way you build trust with another person. Through consistent action over time. You make a small promise and you keep it. Then you make another and you keep that one too. Slowly, day by day, you prove to yourself that you are the type of person who honors commitments. And as that trust grows, so does your capacity to take on bigger challenges, to set more ambitious goals, to step into the life you actually want instead of settling for the life you think you deserve. Now let's address the elephant in the room. What about when you fail? What about when you break the streak? What about when life gets chaotic and you miss a day or a week or even a month? Does that mean you've destroyed everything you built? Absolutely not, because consistency isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. It's not about never missing, it's about always returning. The difference between people who succeed long-term and people who give up is not that successful people never fail. It's that they don't let a single failure become a permanent identity shift. They don't use one mistake as evidence that they're not capable. They treat it as data, they learn from it, they adjust, and they get back to work. Because here's a critical insight: the pattern matters more than the individual instance. If you're consistent 80% of the time, that's infinitely better than being perfect for 2 weeks and then quitting entirely. Most people operate in extremes. They're either all in or all out. They're either on the wagon or completely off it. But sustainable transformation happens in the middle ground. It happens when you develop the maturity to be imperfect but persistent, to be flexible but committed, to give yourself grace while still maintaining standards. And this is where your relationship with failure needs to evolve, because right now you probably see failure as evidence of inadequacy, as proof that you're not good enough. But what if you started seeing failure as feedback, as necessary information on your path to mastery? Every time you fall short, you learn something about your process, about your triggers, about what works and what doesn't, and that information is invaluable if you're willing to use it instead of letting it destroy your momentum. So the question isn't will you fail, the question is how quickly will you get back up? How much time will you waste in the valley of self-pity and excuse-making before you return to the work? And this brings us to one of the most underrated aspects of building consistency, which is designing your environment. You cannot rely on willpower alone because willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. You need to structure your environment in a way that makes the right action the path of least resistance. If you want to work out in the morning, put your workout clothes next to your bed. If you want to eat healthier, don't keep junk food in your house. If you want to write every day, have your workspace set up and ready to go. Remove the friction from the behaviors you want to reinforce and add friction to the behaviors you want to eliminate. This is how you make consistency sustainable because you're not fighting against your environment, you're leveraging it. And here's another truth that might make you uncomfortable. You need to audit the people you're surrounding yourself with because consistency is contagious. If you're around people who constantly make excuses, who celebrate mediocrity, who mock ambition and discipline, then you're going to absorb that energy whether you realize it or not. But if you surround yourself with people who value follow-through, who hold themselves to high standards, who are actively building something meaningful, then their consistency will elevate yours. This doesn't mean you need to abandon everyone in your life, but it does mean you need to be intentional about who gets your time and energy, because you're not just the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You're the average of the content you consume, the conversations you engage in, the standards you're exposed to. So if you're serious about building unshakable consistency, then you need to curate your inputs with the same care that you'd curate a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio. Now let's talk about the compounding effect, because this is where consistency becomes truly magical. When you do something once, the impact is negligible. When you do it for a week, you might see a tiny shift. But when you do it for months and years, the compounding returns become exponential. This is why most people quit too early. They don't see results in the first 30 days, so they assume it's not working. But they don't understand that meaningful change operates on a delay. You're planting seeds today that won't bear fruit for months or even years. And if you keep pulling up the seeds to check if they're growing, you'll never harvest anything. You have to trust the process. You have to believe that if you keep showing up and doing the work, the results will come. And here's the thing, they always do, maybe not on your timeline, maybe not in the exact form you expected, but consistent effort in the right direction always produces results. It's a law of the universe as reliable as gravity. But you have to give it time, you have to be patient enough to stay committed through the invisible progress phase. That period where you're working hard but seeing nothing change externally. And this is where most people break. They can't handle the discomfort of delayed gratification. They need immediate validation, instant results, constant positive feedback. But the truth is, the most valuable things in life require you to work in obscurity for a while, to labor without applause, to trust that the scoreboard will eventually reflect the work you're putting in, even if it doesn't right now. And if you can develop that kind of faith, that kind of deep trust in the process, then you become unstoppable because you're no longer dependent on external validation to keep going. You've internalized the understanding that the work is the reward, that becoming the type of person who keeps their commitments is more valuable than any external achievement. And this shift in perspective changes everything, because now you're not motivated by outcomes, you're motivated by identity. You're not doing the work to get something, you're doing the work because of who you are. And when your actions are aligned with your identity, they become effortless, or at least significantly easier, because you're not fighting against yourself anymore. You're not trying to force yourself to be someone you're not. You've genuinely become the person who does these things. And here's something powerful to consider. Every single person you admire, every successful individual whose life you look at with envy or inspiration, they all have one thing in common: they developed the ability to be consistent. They showed up when they didn't feel like it. They pushed through resistance. They did boring, unsexy work day after day after day. And that's what built everything you see, because overnight success is a myth. It's a convenient story we tell ourselves to avoid confronting the reality that success requires sustained effort over time. When you see someone break through, it's easy to focus on the moment of achievement and ignore the years of preparation that made it possible. But if you want to create your own breakthrough, you need to fall in love with the preparation phase. You need to find meaning in the mundane, purpose in the process, satisfaction in showing up regardless of results. And I know this isn't sexy. I know it's not the exciting message you want to hear. You want to hear about the secret strategy, the hidden hack, the one thing that will change everything. But that's a fantasy. The truth is simpler and harder. The truth is you already know what you need to do. You don't need more information, you need more implementation. You don't need another course or book or podcast. You need to close the gap between what you know and what you do, and that gap is closed through consistent action, through making a decision right now about who you're going to be and then proving it to yourself through your behavior every single day moving forward. So let me ask you directly, are you ready to stop lying to yourself? Are you ready to stop making excuses? Are you ready to stop waiting for the perfect moment or the right feeling? Because I'm telling you right now that moment will never come. You will never feel completely ready. You will never have all the answers. You will never eliminate all the fear. But you can act anyway. You can move forward despite the uncertainty. You can build momentum through action. And once you start, you'll realize that the resistance you were feeling was mostly in your head, that actually doing the thing is often easier than thinking about doing the thing, because our minds are wired to catastrophize, to imagine worst-case scenarios, to protect us from potential threats. But most of the threats we face aren't physical, they're psychological. They're the discomfort of stepping outside our comfort zone, the vulnerability of trying something new, the ego threat of possibly failing. And yes, those things are real, and yes, they're uncomfortable, but they're not dangerous. You can handle discomfort, you can survive failure, you can rebuild after setbacks. What you can't do is build a meaningful life while playing it safe, while staying comfortable, while choosing the easy path every single time, because the easy path compounds just like the hard path, except it compounds in the wrong direction. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're investing in a future version of yourself that's weaker, more limited, more dependent. But every time you choose growth over comfort, you're investing in a future version of yourself that's stronger, more capable, more free, and these investments compound over time. So the question you need to ask yourself is this: what kind of future am I building with my daily choices? Am I building toward strength or weakness, toward expansion or contraction, toward the life I want or the life I'm settling for? And please understand that neutrality is an illusion. You're either moving forward or backward, growing or dying. There is no standing still. So if you're not actively building consistency, if you're not deliberately strengthening that muscle, then by default you're weakening it. You're training yourself to be less reliable, less trustworthy, less capable, and that's a terrifying trajectory. But the good news is you can change course right now. You don't have to wait for Monday or the first of the month or New Year's Day. You can make a different choice in this moment. You can decide that from this point forward you're going to be someone who follows through, someone who keeps their word, someone who does what needs to be done regardless of how they feel. And if you make that decision and then reinforce it through action every single day, within weeks you'll start to see changes. Within months you'll be a different person. Within years you'll have built a life that reflects your highest values and deepest ambitions. But it starts now. It starts with one decision followed by one action followed by another and another, until consistency isn't something you do, it's something you are. So are you ready to become that person? Are you ready to stop talking about change and actually embody it? Are you ready to force yourself to be consistent, not through white-knuckle willpower, but through genuine identity transformation? Because that's what this is really about. It's not about forcing yourself to do things you hate. It's about becoming the type of person for whom the right actions feel natural. And you become that person through repetition, through showing up, through proving to yourself day after day that you are capable of more than you thought. And once you taste that power, once you experience what it feels like to actually follow through on your commitments, you'll never want to go back to the old way of living, because there's a certain kind of freedom that comes from self-trust, a confidence that emerges when you know without a doubt that if you set a goal you'll achieve it, not because it's easy but because you're committed. And that certainty changes how you move through the world. It changes what you're willing to attempt. It changes the size of your dreams. It changes everything. So let this be your wake-up call. Let this be the moment you decide that enough is enough, that you're done living below your potential, that you're ready to step into the disciplined, consistent version of yourself that's been waiting for you to claim it. Because that version exists, it's real, it's possible, it's within your reach. You just have to be willing to do the work, to show up, to be consistent. And if you do, I promise you the life on the other side of that commitment is worth every uncomfortable moment, every early morning, every time you push through when you wanted to quit. It's all worth it. So make the choice, take the action, build the consistency, and watch as everything in your life begins to transform.